So there it is, boys and girls. That is the Tannus Armour out of the wheel, out of the tyre. And I thought I'd just check and see what the compression of the 15mm section of foam has turned out to be after, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 weeks, if that, inside the wheel. Now, the pressures that I run on the rear, it's sort of hard to say. I don't really measure it with the pressure gauge anymore, because you've got to use a lower pressure to begin with anyway, because of the fact that this setup is a bit different and you need to have a tube inside it, and the tube pressure is lower because you've got a harder sort of shell of this foam and all that sort of stuff. So, but it sort of feels like I was sort of running about 30-35 psi in the rear, all right, because I probably do a lot of hard packed sort of gravel and sealed paths and whatnot. Not too much road riding, but yeah, harder rather than softer, but not ultra hard, not over 40 psi kind of hard, you know. It's not hard as a rock. Regardless of all that anyway, I've taken it out to see what the deal is. Now, it is compressed down to about 5mm. So 2/3 of it has compressed down and I'm left with 1/3. So what I've done is I've put in this drawing board pin, and yeah, you can see inside there, bit of focus maybe, it doesn't want to focus, but anyway, we've got about 5mm of the pin poking out, all right. So yeah, it's a 10mm pin, so it's telling me that it's about 5mm. All right, so 4 or 5mm, maybe 6mm in parts, who knows. But yeah, it has substantially reduced in thickness. What it has done though is it's become a lot more harder. You know, when you go to sort of grab it and you feel it, it's a lot more dense. You know, the foam is compressed, so it's a bit more dense now. So the protection for the puncture is still kind of there. You know, like it takes a little bit to push the pin in. You can't just, you know, like if I take that pin out, if you go to sort of like poke it, like it doesn't just stick straight in, all right? So, you know, most kind of puncture situations, I think you're going to be okay. Now, I'll say that because I actually had that little thorn there, which is just moved a little bit, but it's probably around about 9-10mm long, all right, that thorn. It was sitting inside my tyre, poking out the inside, around about 7mm worth. And I didn't get a puncture in the tube because the tyre wasn't flat. All right, I was just pulling these out to see what the thickness of the Tannus Armour was like after time. But yeah, that pin, it's actually a thorn, very sharp. It didn't, you know, it didn't pierce the tube. Now the tube is, oh, it's reasonably thick. It's not, I wouldn't call it ultra heavy duty, but it's not a light duty one, sort of medium duty. And it's the entity tubes that you get if you buy this stuff from Bicycles Online. And yeah, so I'm guessing the puncture protection is still kind of valid. It's still there. It's just not as thick. So yeah, kind of in two minds about it, you know, like a little bit disappointed in the fact that, you know, it's compressed that much over time, but then also, you know, pretty thankful that I haven't got a puncture. Now a friend of mine did get a puncture. I'm not sure how thin his got down to. I didn't see it. I think he said something around about 3 or 4mm, so he must have been running higher pressures than me. He does have narrower tyres as well though, but he actually got a puncture, and it was from a thorn. So it alerted me to the fact, and you know, he sent me a little screenshot of this thing that said, it was from the American side. I couldn't find any information on the Australian site, but they do say that you should deflate your tyres if you're not riding for a while. Now, I mean, you know, I'd ride at least once a week, if not more. So I really wouldn't have thought I'd have to deflate my tyres every time I ride, just so that I can retain this 15mm of, you know, that they bang on about, this 15mm thickness, which is, you know, the holy grail of puncture protection and ride comfort and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, now that it's gone down to this, I've sent them off an email, and I've just sort of quizzed them and said, you know, like, okay, I've taken it out after 10 or 12 weeks. How long should I wait for this thing to recompress to 15mm, and how can I minimize or stop it from happening again? And I can pretty much say, you know, they're just going to turn around and say, well, don't inflate your tyres so hard and deflate them and that. But, you know, like, what is the maintenance schedule? You know, like, how often should you deflate these things? Now, I had it had the bike sitting up on a hook off the ground, and tyres deflated for the last 2 days. And I thought, oh, maybe it's decompressed and come back to normal, but no, definitely hasn't. It's still, I mean, unless it was worse than this, but it's still only around about 5 mil, so no longer 15 mil. But I did still wear puncture protection. So yes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this pin inside the tyre, or inside the armour. And what I'm going to do is just let this thing sit. See, it's hard to get in. I mean, it's it's still quite puncture resistant. I'm trying to push that in with one finger, and it's reasonably hard. There we go. So it's in, and sticking out the other side. Yeah. So I'm going to leave that in there. I'm going to see how many days it takes for it to regain some of its compression. I'm looking at it now. Like I said, it's probably around about 5 mil. Yeah, it's about 5 mil sticking through. So let's see if that rebounds. I'm not going to hold my breath because I just don't think it's going to have that kind of memory. I don't call it a memory foam. And they don't really go on about this issue too much on the Australian website. So anyway, if you're running the Tannus, this is what you can expect if you're running the tube setup.